Never cut a corner.
You never cut a corner. So
never once. For those of us who wanted to work quickly, it could be enormously frustrating. Okay, let's build 500 to start with. I'm not sure I can sell these yet. Hold on a minute.
Yeah, it sort of evolved. It's never usually a great conversation topic at dinner parties, being a traffic light expert.
Much better call it there.
That's why I waited for you to do yours first, so I could think a bit more.
The innovative things that you do and have done, your R&D, like what that, obviously we aren't trade secrets, but like what that looks like or what that process is, like how many people are involved in that. Does someone lead it? Is it a team? Is it a big team? How's that team changed from 5 years ago? Just that kind of story. Do you find pushback on new tech, whether that be from clients, people internally, like you're just saying that people are generally a little bit resistant, like how do you kind of then get over that and get people to try and adopt new things, whether that be clients or people in-house? I put like just a bit of an overview on like tech in the industry and the sort of things people might adopt in 2019 that they won't even think about now because it's come on so far again, or general is there less resistance now industry-wide to coming onto new things because people are a little bit more open to tech-based solutions rather than, like you say, manual handling. This is how we've always done it.
I'd say more people are, but it seems to me that it's always certain people within companies that are really interested in new technology rather than the whole industry being accepting of the fact that there's technology that potentially means they need to employ less people, and at which point some people have a problem with that because they charge per person per day, so it's always tricky. I won't mention that one, but yeah.
It's an interesting. It is an interesting discussion though, because obviously you don't want to be naming names and annoying anyone, but like I imagine some of the companies that are like that. We actually touched on it briefly before you arrived, didn't we? Saying like if you charge them per man. That might be a company that'll sit and say, we're interested, safety is our number one priority. We can't be any safer than not putting a bloke at roadworks.
Yeah.
But it's an income stream, and then all of a sudden, is that actually a company value, or is it nice to say as long as it doesn't affect a bit of income? I'm not saying we go too deep into something like that, but I don't think it's a bad thing to raise the point. If I said to you, what about challenges? And you were saying, well, we have to understand our some of our client base. If the person on site is an income stream for them, and we might be saying you don't need that person, we're almost asking them to look at things in a completely other way because now it affects their bottom line. I don't think there's anything wrong with.
That's what we did when we
raising that. It shows you understand it, which I think for a takeaway piece of content, you might end up with a 30-second snippet video out of this whole thing that's like, here's what Tom had to say about how sometimes what we do is perfect for the job, but not perfect for the client.
Yeah.
And it's just a little bit of a education nugget that says, we know that this tech is the best for the job. However, we also understand how it might affect.
We get this quite,
I'm not
quite
sure.
a lot, don't you? Security on lights, we have to find the balance. With security, people say, why don't you make your lights more secure? So, well, we can, but they're going to be heavier, so you'll be able to take less of them on a van.
Yeah.
They're going to cost more, and the thief, whoever it might be, will do more damage to the light getting into it for effectively what is normally 2 batteries, maybe 3 batteries, depending on the piece of equipment, that are worth 30 quid in scrap value. So you have to find a balance there, don't you? That's light but secure.
I think it's the having a man on site is something that's changed over time as well. Like back in 2019, there wasn't such a skills shortage, but I think COVID, has changed people's perspective on things, and I think now people are more willing to put CCTV on site in place of a man on site. But it's also coming from the highways authorities. They are stipulating there should be a man on site when some of our customers are saying, actually that's presents a challenge for us because we don't have the resources to man every single site. especially when they're just going to sit there and not deliver value for the client.
Yeah, especially when the lights can do the managing of traffic for them and whatnot. But yeah, like I say, when they do get a request for manual control or a person on site, quite often it doesn't specify what the authority is looking to achieve by having a person on site as well.
Right.
So that's always a bit of a challenging one. I'm not sure there's any kind of rules written down, for authorities to consider, apart from sort of, speed of road traffic numbers and things like that, or just how integral that junction is to like the local network. But what do they actually want to achieve? And I don't think if they do know it, they're probably not passing that on to the traffic management company, who could say, oh no, we can achieve that by having a piece of technology that can do it, and a person remotely viewing it on a camera. And if there's a problem, we'll let you know, or we'll let the traffic management company know. So I think it's a strange balance to try and strike, isn't it?
I think that's where some of the interesting conversation comes in, though, because that's where you just get to almost show a different side to your thinking as a business, understanding that not everything's just going, oh, product's great, so use it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you understand the nuance of some of your clients there, and even just by talking about it, that then comes across on video. Like, even just, you don't have to say it's right or wrong or whatever.
No,
but I think that sort of stuff's
Yeah.
some of the interesting stuff that we want to be able to get to. And like I say, then when you've got a 20-second video, 40-second video, the little stuff that you can like use on your socials, it's you guys talking about topics a bit more complex than just, we're really good at what we do and this is why people should use us, because I think that's a bit played out, because everyone's going to say they're really good at what they do.
Self-promoted, really.
Yeah, to a degree. Like, you got to do it, but the reason we wanted to do stuff like this was to be able to not just like set up a web call and record it. It's a little bit more in depth where you can get into that kind of stuff.
No, exactly.
But I think that's really good. And then things like I say, company value stuff, like just from like going through your side and stuff, things like safety and sustainability obviously get mentioned on there a lot. I remember you giving me once your sustainability report.
Yeah.
And it was like that. And I thought, fair play. Like, that's not someone who's just going, box tick, green. Like, that was pretty comprehensive.
There's a lot of effort that went into that, to be fair.
And obviously that's something that over the last...
6 months behind on the
that one out.
But probably 2 or 3 years suddenly became a massive like industry thing where everyone cared. And then net zero targets moved a bit, and it's
I think
off a bit. In the type of content we see, for example, still gets mentioned, still important, but it's not as relentless as it was, say, like 2 years ago, because it's almost like the pressure's off for a bit, and it's gone from everyone's priority number 1 to maybe everyone's priority number 4 or 3. It's not like it's gone, but obviously for you that's been quite full on, given the level of detail in that thing, that resource that I had for
I think we started from a point of we just did it anyway. It was like just part of doing the right thing. So before we even started looking at CSR, we had solar panels on the roof, and we were looking at employee well-being and having ergonomic workspaces, reducing waste and supply chain. So when we started that report, we came from a place of doing CSR anyway. But I think as we grow, and the more you do in CSR, the less your gains can be, because there's only so much waste you can cut out of your supply chain. Obviously, there's only so much green energy you can use. I mean, we are carbon positive in at least 1 or 2 of our sites. But then, we've had to increase our fleet to meet demand. Well, every vehicle you buy, unless it's an EV, which is impractical in the TM world, you're sort of taking from one hand and giving with the other, in a sense. So it is a challenge to keep up with the CSR stuff, definitely. But you just got to look at,
like you say, once you make the real big strides, if you like, everything then might be like, 1% gain here, but 2% loss here, but hang on, we get 3% win back here, and you're starting to dabble in smaller margins.
You are, but you need to look at it from the other point of view as well, where sometimes you don't make decisions that are right for your business because of CSR. You know, like the fact that we've got to seriously consider how many vans we buy. When, you know, the right number was say 4. You go, okay, we'll just do 3 for now, because then obviously there's a balancing act to be had, like Will touched on. So it's really difficult. It really is. You know, as we've bought, we've grown, we bought a lorry and things like that. So then, you know, that's a big diesel, 26-ton lorry. You know, so that's a bit of a machine to account for in your CSR, isn't it? You know, but
exactly. You don't want to sort of go off and try and carbon offset things by planting trees or paying someone to do it for you. You kind of want to just focus on the things you can control, but you've got to make the right choices for your business as well as your customers, and you know the environment has got to fit in there somewhere. But your priorities will shift over time. Things like the community side of things is also quite difficult to do. It requires quite a lot of volunteering and employee effort. So it's also trying to encourage staff to think beyond what they do in their role. Is there any way that we can give back locally, nationally, internationally in some cases? So that's something that we've looked at in terms of sort of sponsoring football teams and rugby teams. So there's a number of CSR facets that we're looking at, but it's a journey. It's not a race.
But we found through some bits that we've done, even when you said just about requiring like some effort and volunteering from like companies that we work with, just having something like that extra on someone's plate, even if it's a great cause and the people are great people and all the rest of it, like it's still something extra on someone's plate, isn't it? Mm-hmm. If you're already jocker and busy and stuff like that, it's almost easy to think, someone else probably do that, or I'll do it when I'm less busy, but then you never get that.
I think it's a defined role now, CSR practitioner or representative. I think it's a separate role from QSHE or HR or whatever sort of people might have dabbled in it before. I think nowadays it's a full-time role, depending on the size of your company and how much effort you're going to put into it. But for me it's a separate role now.
Yeah, exactly. I think when you look at a report and you get a set of numbers, and they might be better than last year, they might be worse, but it's sort of, well, what next? And whose responsibility is it to go and let's review all of our energy suppliers across the business? When we've got 5-6 different offices, they might all have different suppliers, which all might have their own green credentials or not. Looking at things we get from China, who's going to look at, can we get that, can we insource that in locally, nationally? There's lots of parts to it in terms of waste and material reduction that you need someone constantly looking at how we can improve, whereas having individuals just reporting on what they're doing doesn't quite go far enough to give you the gains that you need. So
was that like quite a big adjustment and challenge this year to the business when Pete passed? Like day to day, was he still very hands-on?
He'd get involved in everything. He would. He always had great sort of thoughts and ideas and plans for how we should operate as a business. He wouldn't necessarily be on the floor with a screwdriver with anyone. But you probably know that more than me actually. But he was very involved across the board, to be fair. So I think at the manufacturing facilities, it probably didn't notice it quite so much, but in terms of office and middle management who had daily dealings with Pete, it was a shock and obviously a very sad time. But a bit of a shock for the business as well, wasn't it? Yeah,
I mean, Pete is an engineer at heart, so whenever there was a problem within the business, he wanted to be there and help support and solve it. Just looking at product design, he was always interested in how we could reduce the plastic used and where we could source the plastic from, and he liked to be involved in those sort of decisions. Even as an MD with 150 employees sort of reporting into him. So all these sort of initiatives he led, he did it, through his own passion. So there are obviously a lot of people in the business who are keeping the ship running. So yeah, it was a big shock to the business. But
I think even now though, when you you open up a drawing that we did for a design idea or something like that, and you think, oh bloody hell, we spoke about that, or Pete, that was Pete's idea a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was, and then you see a product come through manufacturing, and it started really in conversation with Pete. It's how that product was born, but then now we're seeing it come through even after he's passed away. So it's it was a big change, but we're bringing in the right people nowadays, aren't we, for to lead the business where it needs to go in the future. So we're hopeful that everything will work out just fine, to be honest. So
when you mentioned like his values, I guess they automatically sort of become the business values.
Yeah.
CSR being like a big one. Like what else would you say are those business values? Like what are the real pillars of like what the company stands for?
So I mean, he, as I said, he's an engineer, so he always wanted to innovate. He wanted to improve things. A job was never really finished. It could always be improved.
Never cut a corner.
You never cut a corner. So
never once. For those of us who wanted to work quickly, it could be enormously frustrating. But he never cut a corner. He'd do absolutely everything the right way, even though you could quite easily argue that no one would ever find out. That it just was not in his makeup to do something by half measures, or not with complete sort of openness and transparency, was it really?
No. And I think he would be prepared to sort of put his money where his mouth was, in terms of if he believed something was a good idea and right for the industry, would improve safety, he would 100% commit to it. Things like our metro project, before it even really taken off, he committed to build 500 signals, because he knew that at some point, when the industry knew how performant it was, that they would come and get it, and we wanted to be in a position. And I think that people in the business would question, that's a massive amount of investment for a product that's not even launched yet. But now we're at the point now where everything's out, and we couldn't have got there without this initial
belief
really, and belief in the people working on the project.
He did the same with Evo 1 as well, straight out on the back of Metro. Obviously they share a lot of the same technology anyway, but the Evo 1, sort of the portable signal that we do, it was let's build 500 to start with. I'm not sure I could sell these yet. Hold on a minute. So I'm not sure people are ready for these, because they're so advanced that when you talk to some people about it, it's just so alien to what they've been used to for 10, 15 years, since like the old diesel cable sets left the market, and radio operated lights come in. They're probably the biggest step forward since then. But but again, no, it's fine. Let's build. We've made a product. We've got a great idea. If we make it and we go and speak to people, people will take it, and we'll be in a good position in the future. And he was right, to be fair. So,
and then, because I saw your command centre in Central and thought that's pretty impressive. Did that almost come the other way? So you had the system and the units, and you're like, it'd be good to have somewhere on site if we could just do all this.
Yeah.
Was that another one of his brainchildren, or was that more? Where did that come from? Because I thought that was quite cool.
Yeah, it came afterwards, didn't it? After the initial sort of
that's me as a real amateur. I go, that's quite cool. Like, forgetting the fact it does an important job, but
I think the way that technology is now, our pro service sort of design team can be anywhere, as long as they've got internet connection. They can be anywhere and monitor it. But obviously, Pete was always wanting a sort of designated space for something, wasn't he? And
I think
the opportunity came up to do it, didn't it?
Yeah, it's like if you want to do a job well, you've got to have the right tools. And before the van came along, it was someone sat in the back seat of a BMW and driving to site and trying to solve problems on site, without very good lighting, without a comfortable workstation, trying to solve hugely critical congestion issues, and we thought, is there another way? Is there a better way of doing it? So the concept of having a van that someone could sit in with screens was where it started, and even now we're still adding bits to the van as we come across.
Yeah, even the van's changed in the last year or so, hasn't it? It used to have a backup sort of diesel generator in the back of the van to keep the power on, but now it's got a sort of Fandango battery pack in it now instead. You can charge in the last 3 days, chargers and things like that. So we've gone back to that and changed that, spent the money on that, and obviously because when you have got sort of leaner, greener, and more efficient and safer, obviously down the side, it's not great having diesel generator
running,
which was pointed out to us on one of our first jobs actually by a lady in central London.
All that time, all that investment and energy and R&D getting it done, and the first person says to you, that diesel.
An office worker from central London just come along and just wipe the floor with us in a couple of sentences.
We'll just get back to work now.
What she didn't see was how much we were sort of making the traffic flow and saving diesel fumes from 100 vehicles, not just that one. But I can't blame her for making the comment.
So if she's watching,
we listened.
But she did. You wipe the floor with us completely.
But no, that is like the Batmobile for us. If we do have an issue on site, if we had a vehicle crash into a signal, that's the van that we go to has got everything we need to solve most of the problems that might come up.
Well, we're similar with ours, obviously not for the same purpose, but that filming vehicle that we use, same sort of thing, game changer, because we'd be sat waiting for the traffic management to go on, and you're in the back of the car. Tom, who's filming me, Tom was watching an entire football match waiting for traffic management to go on. We were parked in a Shell petrol station, crammed in my car, watching a football match, waiting for the traffic count to drop, and being able to do it in a vehicle that's fit for purpose and not be squished in and all the rest of it. It does make a big difference, doesn't it, for you people on site as well?
Definitely.
Just like the comfort and being able to sit at that table and relax and chill and not be squished in, like trying to work in a surrounding that's not overly comfortable.
I think we've got a couple of sort of slimmed down versions of that command van as well now that a couple of our engineers have got around the country. So it hasn't got everything in it that the command van has, but because obviously they do another job on top of that. But we've got several now, so it's a good product to have, good piece of kit to have.
Exactly, it goes beyond just solving the immediate traffic control issues on site. It's actually somewhere we can bring highways authorities and traffic managers in to show them how we're running the site, collaborate, work on things, if they need to change anything because the phasing of works has changed. It might be that we find out when we're on site, well actually if we've got the signal engineer and the traffic management scheme designer on site, we can reconfigure the site there and then, implement it, and there's a very quick turnaround. So
especially on the really complex sites as well, where we on a really complex site we'll send someone down on purpose, even without there being an issue, and they'll be on site in the command van for 24, 48 hours. With breaks, obviously. But we've got it there because obviously nothing's better than actually feeling the traffic and seeing the traffic with your own eyes as it happens. Cameras can only show you so far down the road, or if there's a road sign in the way of a camera, you can't see all the way down the road. So we often do that. We've done it recently on the M4. Lots of high-profile sites that we can use the van and obviously the expertise of the people sitting in it to what we call dial in a site, where we put it out on its timings to start with, and then obviously over time, over a couple of days, you're able to really sort of nail down how efficient the system is whilst maintaining that safety that has to be there all the time. It's a really good piece of kit.
I guess for your client as an experience as well, it's not like either saying like just cram in the back of this car and look what our person's doing. Again, even that, it's a better environment to just bring someone in, isn't it? Because again, we have we have the same. If you're watching, someone flying a drone over someone's shoulder, okay, but if you can just sit in a vehicle and just see it on the big screen as it happens, they know what they're getting more as it's happening, rather than looking at a smaller screen from a sort of side-on angle straight away. Your clients are just in the picture a lot better, aren't they?
And it goes back to sort of the comment about Pete and not doing anything in half measures or anything like that. It was full measure. It's an expensive build on that van. I won't say the figure, but it was expensive. And Pete was like, "Yep, let's do it." That was it. There was no debate. It was, "Oh, you want that in it? Okay, yeah, no problems." And it was, effectively, he was just saying not yes to everything, but anything the guys felt they need, that they've been on the road, he'd fully support them.
Yeah, it was allowed to evolve into what it is today, and we've sort of taken that approach with other vehicles as well. It's sort of like, we're looking beyond our normal scope of expertise and thinking, well, like say battery management, how is that currently done in the industry? Can we look at improving the way that, say, battery swaps are performed, and what would the ideal battery swapping vehicle look like? And we've got a couple of examples of how we're doing that.
Because you can't forget that batteries obviously are a hazardous substance, and transporting them, you're under certain rules.
Yeah.
So, which obviously, historically in the traffic management industry, they've had no choice but to use a flatbed vehicle or van, strap the batteries down and whatnot. But we're looking at different ways to do that. We're already using different ways to do that, to be fair. So it's proven quite successful so far. So.
You two pretty much started at the same time as the company in its current guise formed. Mm-hmm. What's that little 5-year journey been like? How is it still very similar? Is it wildly different in terms of personnel, numbers of employees, tech systems? What's that little 5 years look like in a vacuum?
So when Tom and I joined the business, we just formed Traffic Group Signals, so this is 2019. Before that, we had Hollco and Pike Signals working very separately, and Archon, who were doing sort of signal servicing. And we formed Traffic Group Signals as a way of bringing the businesses together, centralising things like quality and safety, marketing, sales, senior management, etc., to just make it a leaner, more efficient organisation. So we were brought in at the same time. It was also around the time of Traffic, so that's when it was officially launched as a sort of parent company to those businesses. And since then, we've really been on the journey of introducing lean manufacturing, developing new products, and just building the business as Traffic Group Signals to where it is today.
I think Hollco and Pike are now sort of two different sites where we manufacture lights, but there's no real sort of competition. They're not separate businesses, if you like, anymore. In the days before, or days when TGS first started, there was still the hangover of the fact that before then they were fierce competitors.
Right, okay.
So there was
you got staff that hated each other then.
Contractually obliged, to hate each other. So it took a little while to sort of navigate that kind of historic. Well, don't tell them anything because they'll use that. And,
understandable. Yeah.
And but now it's just two different manufacturing sites that we've got, and a lot of the technology that's in one is in the other, and it's just shared straight across the platforms now, isn't it?
Yeah. So we tried to recognise the heritage. Pike Signals was founded in the 1930s, so there's a great deal of history there that we didn't want to just erase overnight. So we've kept Pike as a manufacturing entity, and you'll see that on our products as well. But ultimately, the business needed to change. It needed to modernise. It needed to professionalise, and that's what we've been doing. I think since 2019 we invested in lean manufacturing, which is something that's come over from AGD Systems, our sister company, and we've introduced sort of ergonomic workspaces. We've reduced manual handling, almost eliminated it in some cases. Looked at sort of shadow boards for our workstations. We've got assembly line type procedures as well to make productivity grow. which has been a bit alien for a lot of our production staff, who are used to coming in, having their bench, doing their thing, not really having to interact with their colleagues, clocking out at the end of the day, to now sort of more collaborative working, and everyone relies on team working in order to build the products and get them out the door in time. So it's been a bit of a shift. It's a bit alien to a few people, but I think now we've got to a point where it's working really well.
And what about your own roles within those 5 years? Have you got exactly what you bargained for when you joined, or is that different?
For me personally, it's more complex now than when I first started. I came straight into the sales team, and our only remit at the time was to sell traffic lights. That was it. Obviously now we hire signals, so the hire team reporting to me. We've obviously got our Metro and Evo 1 professional services products. So again, our team puts that out. So it's a lot more involved than it was. For me, it's all for the better, really. Personally, I much prefer being busier and having more fingers across spread everything than just concentrating on just solely sales, because the market, as we look at it, has different people want different things. Some people want to buy it and have that kit for a number of years. Other people prefer to hire, spot hire or contract or wherever it might be, to answer the needs of a certain sort of peak in workload they've got. So that's good for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as a marketing manager, for us it's more than just red, amber, green. It's sort of convincing people of the benefit of the products, the value of having more efficient sites and reducing congestion. So really getting a deep knowledge of the products and how they work is kind of really been my focus, and looking at case studies, working with our customers to try and bring out the best in the industry. We sort of started at that point, and now I'm working sort of more across the traffic group as a whole, where we've got AGT Systems who specialise in the radar technology that's in our products, MAV System who develop ANPR cameras, and looking at how we can bring synergies across the three businesses and give customers a more complete offering. So it sort of evolved. It's never usually a great conversation topic at dinner parties, being a traffic light expert, but it's been interesting. Working in the product development side. I've been on the radio a few times answering questions about traffic lights. So it's been fun. It's a good place to work.
I can just imagine that radio being like some sort of Alan Partridge-esque photo. We've got an expert here.
Not far off, actually.
Not far off. Well, it's the first time I had a call. I was in Pike. We were doing a photo shoot because we had a new product. We were launching Metro, so we had a photo shoot for Metro. So I was there with a team of photographers setting up this shoot, and I had Julie come down and say, "Oh, Will, I've got BBC Stoke on the phone. They're asking who would do an interview." I said, "Well, it's probably going to be me as the marketing manager." It's like, when do they want to do it? Oh, in about 15 minutes. So I was like, "You're fucking kidding me!" Just land that on me from BBC Stoke. So
even way more organised than 15 minutes. At least you had 2 hours in the car to think about what you might say.
Exactly. So I had to take this call, BBC Stoke, answer a few questions. I thought, okay, well, I didn't embarrass myself too much, but that put me on the list then for BBC as traffic light expert. A year later, I did another one for BBC Stoke. So whenever they have these big sites go up, they always get readers or listeners' questions come in. They go, "Oh, we know a guy who can answer this." But the peak of my career to date is when I had a call from the Jeremy Vine show. So I ended up going on the Jeremy Vine show to answer questions about traffic lights. So it's been quite entertaining.
That's quite cool where BBC Radio Stoke can take you then, all the way to all the way to the big leagues. In that little 5-year period then, how do you perceive, how has the industry changed in terms of being open to tech or resistant to new tech and innovations? exactly how it was, or do you find as more and more tech just comes into everyday life, people are more open, or do you find people are just maybe more picky and look to find even more faults and problems than before just because they know more about tech in general?
Yeah, I think it depends on who you're speaking to. Really does. So some customers of ours absolutely embrace anything that new technology, in terms of technology that they can use to give a better service to their customers. If they can save some money in the process of delivering that, then absolutely great. If they save their customers money, even better. And then obviously there are some that don't. You know, it just depends on the people you're speaking to. It's our job to try and talk to them about it, at least inform them so they can make their own decisions based on what they feel is best for their business.
I think the industry is moving on. I think back when I started, we were launching AutoGreen, which was new to the industry, a way of automatically adjusting green times based on how much traffic volume there is. And the original perception was, usually we have a man on site who can change things throughout the day. That means there's one less body on the road, that's revenue. We're not too sure about that. But nowadays, CCTV is becoming a more common thing on sites, and people are adopting that, and they're thinking, well, actually, can we work this site without a man in this sort of unsafe environment? So there's a bit of a shift going on there. But one thing within the industry is if you have a fleet of signals, you might have 300 signals. It's very difficult for a traffic management company to suddenly go, well, I'm going to buy this new signal because it's the latest and greatest. Well, I've got 300 signals. What am I going to do with those now? So it can be quite hard to adopt new technology when you're heavily invested in something that becomes a legacy product effectively. So we're seeing a bit more hire coming into it, where customers can access new technology without having this big financial outlay, and maybe they're more selective about this site will need the best technology because it's such a critical location. But for those sites, I'll continue using my conventional product. So it's how do we work with customers to get the best solution for the application and making the most of technology when they can afford to do it.
So informing people about their choice. So people know they've got a choice now over certain signals are better for certain environments than others. And I think as long as people know that, then they can make an informed decision about what they want to do. They can talk to their customer about what their preference is. It really can work quite well in that way.
The day that we spent with you down in Bank, I can imagine manually would have been a pretty complex job for anyone to coordinate. That was a busy old set of junctions, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't allowed to be. The City of London stipulated that it couldn't be just run by the normal portable traffic lights and a person on site. So that was part of the remit right from the start on that job. It needed something more intelligent. It needed something that was flexible enough to change with as they went around different pavements, realigning curbs and putting new paving down and ducting for new poles, new cabinet for the permanent signal controller. So we had our metro set out there, but we could obviously move around with the needs of the works that happened on site. So
yeah, I think the ultimate goal for us as a signal manufacturer is how can we make the temporary signals work almost as good as the permanent site signals that were there before. You'll never get it 100% because you're closing roads and reducing the amount of road space available. But there are lots of things you can do from a signalling perspective now with new technology that you couldn't 5-10 years ago. So it's educating customers about the benefits of doing things a certain way, assigning value to reducing congestion, improving journey times, and safety. And one thing with like permanent signals, they're never configured by a man sat at the side of the road. He won't sit there and go, well, I'm going to put X amount of time on this one, X amount of time on that one. It's all designed by a computer in an office by an experienced engineer. So we're taking that approach, that philosophy, and applying it to the temporary space. So this is where a lot of our investment is going, is improve signalling, increase safety, and just try and reduce the environmental impact of our operations.
I guess you get a bit of a knock-on effect when it comes to safety as well. When you said before about someone being on site, with the amount of reports in like abuse of people on sites as well, I guess inadvertently you bring a big boost there as well, don't you? It's not even just like road user safety or pedestrian safety, it's actual, that one person that might be there isolated on site, you take them out of a potential firing line as well.
Yeah, I think you speak to any traffic management operative anywhere in the country, they'll have experienced some form of abuse, whether it be verbal, physical. So if we can take them out of the firing line so that they're not sat at the roadside as easy target, easy pickings for disgruntled road users, then we should try to do that. It's not just the sort of physical and verbal abuse though, there's obviously environmental factors that people are going to be out in the wind, rain, burning sun all day long, that kind of thing. You want to keep them out of the way of that kind of risk if you can.
Yeah, I think there's this public perception that if you've got high vis on and you're on site, you should have a shovel in your hand digging a hole, but it's kind of, people don't really understand that.
Yeah, you hear that a lot, don't you? Like, they're never doing anything as a bit of a blanket.
Yeah, so it
is, you see it mainly about motorways more than anything, you see sort of empty lanes on motorways coned off, but obviously, the cost to take all of that off every night and put it back again, it would just be prohibitive. Quite often people don't see that there's a big trench dug somewhere on the side of the road that means you can't just open everything back up again, so it's a balancing act. I'm sure there are sites where occasionally there isn't as much work going on as it should be, but it's in general people are generally working on those sites when they're out, aren't they?
Yeah, I think something we've looked at is if there are sites nearby where we're putting signals in, trying to take that in account when doing our signalling and having those conversations with highways authorities to say, well, how long's that work's going on for? What's the impact of that site on this one? Is it better to try and coordinate the signals so they operate in time with each other? Because you could do the most efficient signalling on one site, but if you've got a roundabout and some traffic lights just around the corner, that could just mess everything up for you. And it's all just seen as work by the travelling public, which they'd rather not have. So it's better coordination, collaboration, communication between all parties can help reduce the abuse that workers get doing this sort of essential service, but also asking yourself, do we really need to put a man in this environment, rather than permitting it as a kind of standard de facto, well, if there's any problems, I'll just send a guy there all day. Can we look at new ways of reducing that need, especially with this sort of skills shortage in the industry? And we see technology as a way of solving that.
When it comes to that tech, like what's your R&D process and like thought process like? Because like you say, there might be a standard approach to say, okay, we need an individual there all day because they're there if anything happens. At some point, I guess companies like yourselves are going to sit and go, okay, the thought of not needing that person that's just in this one example, complete standard practice for years and years and years, like how is that new thought and R&D driven? Is that someone literally one day might walk in and say, I've had an idea, or are you scheduled for certain sit downs and meetings and think tank type stuff?
Yeah, we have regular meetings. A lot of us come up with good ideas, or our customers often give us good ideas as well, to be fair, and we'll take them away to our R&D team and suggest it to them, at which point sometimes it's...
I'm only laughing because my mind goes back to the lady with the van who shut you down.
But sometimes they will shut us down because it's just not feasible, or it would take so much development that the light could never cost little enough for people to take it up. But our R&D team are really quite a talented bunch, and they're working for stuff several years from now already. So but it's difficult, isn't it? When we released Autogreen, we gave the advice about how and when to use it. There's certain scenarios where Autogreen might not be for the best. You might need a person on site. So outside a hospital entrance, for example, where you can literally have someone to press on red if it needs it. That's still the case, and that's still necessary for some locations. But with a lot of our sort of more modern technology, the Metro and the Evo 1 Pro systems, we have people watching constantly anyway. So if a lorry breaks down on site or in the middle of the site, they're able to remotely log into the lights, if you like, and control them in a way that to allow for traffic to get around, say, a broken down bus or lorry or whatever it might be. So,
like a manual takeover from.
pretty much, yeah. They can put the lights to red, or they can push a green phase longer if they wanted to clear a particular junction and things like that. I wouldn't quite call it sort of remote manual control. I don't think it's not quite that, but they can easily influence the lights. And obviously, a lot of our systems now are set up on what's called a CLF plan. And a CLF plan is what a lot of local authorities use on permanent signals. So they'll tell the lights how to behave at certain times of the day.
Okay.
At a permanent junction, say for example, and if a certain set of parameters happens, if you get a detection here, then you're going to do that one there. You'll respond in that way. And we do the same with our lights now. So they're set up on these CLF plans that obviously we can remote back into and change whenever we want. We can set up a weekend CLF plan, a Saturday morning one. We can give, we have a site out at the moment where we've got the CLF plan is called Mini Boost. And it's if the northbound traffic gets slightly backed up, we install Mini Boost for an hour, and it will just give slightly more green time to northbound traffic. So there's all sorts of things we can do to really tailor the signal timings down to the specific site, rather than just the historic traffic management plan that's usually got 30 seconds green, 15 red in the corner. For all phases, we can really sort of nail down the most efficient and safest timings. Plus, a lot of our software that we use, in particular Signal Studio, it will, as our guys design it will actually suggest to them the most efficient way to run the signals. So if they put the stage order in a certain way, and then the computer could effectively tell them, no, actually you'd be more efficient if you did it the other way around. At which point they might override it because it's safer to do it slightly less efficient. But if it's still as safe with more efficiency, then they'll take that. So
our engineering team have always been closely related to the commercial output of selling a site in a sense. So they'll be there from the moment the inquiry comes in, to designing the scheme, to helping deliver it in coordination with our service engineers. So through that whole process, they'll understand the nuances of the site and the sort of issues that might come up, and they'll go away and design solutions for them. So it's things like, if you've got a long shuttle lane, they might observe the site and see that cyclists struggle to get through the shuttle lane in time. So can we develop technology to identify when there's a cyclist in the shuttle lane pedaling like mad to get to the end before the next phase comes on? So we've looked at having AI cameras in, so when we see a cyclist, we can extend the green time. So that's come about through the engineering team being an embedded part of our service delivery, and identifying these problems and then developing solutions. And we've got about 30 plus engineers across the group who are all very skilled in radar technology, radio technology, good physicians who can look at geometry of the site and how to configure timings. And we just obsess about these sort of problems and finding the right solution, regardless of how much it costs. It's, we think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the physics model that Will was referring to there on our Signal Studio effectively takes into account the gradient of the road, the types of, and it will give you the distance covered, and it will give you a measurement for how long each vehicle will take to run that part of the road until the conflict point, which is obviously you need to pass the conflict point before you can let the next phase go green. So it will tell you that a car will take 8 seconds, a van will take 9, a HGV will take 13 and a cyclist will take 15. So you have to account for the 15-second cyclists rather than just the 8-second car.
That makes sense.
Especially in a world where a lot of the books and manuals that everyone refers to were written at a time when we had 30 mile an hour speed limits everywhere. Now we're at a 20 mile an hour speed limit. Most cyclists on a hill won't achieve 20 miles an hour, so we have to account for the fact that they will probably be slower. So we have things like internal detection now, whereas historically all detection faced outwards to measure what traffic was approaching site. We now measure the bit in the middle, and we keep the red time small, but when we detect that someone's still moving through a shuttle lane, we'll extend the red time. So that means the next phase has to wait. They get out safely, but it also means that when there's no one there, we don't have to account for the slowest person, because there's no one there. The lights will see there's no one there, and you keep the red time short, which keeps you efficient. I did some maths with a basic site we were looking at the other day. That about 300 metre shuttle on it. Yeah, it's a big site, and I think we worked out that the system would do 49 more cycles per day. And it was a 5-minute cycle time on this. It would do 49 times 5 minutes more per day, which I don't work out the carbon footprint and whatnot, but it's a fair bit of extra moving traffic by having a whole system able to run another almost 50 times in a day.
I'm going to say, I wish I could have done 49 times 5 really quickly and pulled one out there, but...
yeah, 245.
I'm going to say I was around about 50 times 5 rough guide in my head, and then you finish speaking and I was lost.
But it just shows that, that a small gain on a site, even if it's something like 3 seconds, 4 seconds per phase in a cycle, you might be talking 4 cycles, you're saving 12 to 15 seconds per cycle of a system. And if a system, some of them out there doing 600 cycles a day, that adds up all those seconds. And if you can keep traffic moving and moving and moving all the time, then there's less chance of it all being congested, less chance of us affecting driver behaviour as well. Because I think it's on us to try our best to influence good driving behaviour around sites, and you can't do that if you're making people wait 3 or 4 minutes to get a green light. You need to keep them moving. They need to be able to see that there's traffic moving, and then there's less likely to run a red, things like that, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, some of our sites are getting 80,000 vehicles per day going through them. So, every little gain you can make, is sometimes it could be a cost saving. It could affect how many people visit the shops. It could affect how many people arrive to work on time, get to their doctor's appointments on time. So it does really make a difference, just even a couple of seconds on a cycle.
Absolutely. You need that to work in reverse at the other end of the day as well, because obviously everything might head northbound in the mornings. You need the extra time there, but southbound in the evening. So it's on us to recognise that, work out where our site is in proximity to local retail parks and things like that, transport centres. We've done a few. Greenford Road comes to mind. HS2 work again. There was a retail park around there. There was big Waitrose and Sainsbury's distribution, shopping distribution. Huge busy area out in West London, and it took a little while, but we ended up having to take over 2 junctions. We had R1 and we took over the one next door because we had to manage the traffic all the way through. So it went really well in the end.
Sustainability is a big focus for you. I've seen your report, very comprehensive.
Yeah.
Going back to Pete and his values and CSR, I imagine this falls within this bracket right from day one.
Yes. Yeah.
How's that kind of developed over your 5 years there? Because I think it's fair to say probably like this industry is looking more at sustainability, particularly environmental aspects of sustainability more and more so recently. Mm-hmm. Why is that so important to you, other than it sort of just being a value that Pete started with?
Yeah, I mean, CSR is something we've been doing without really realising it for some time. We've had solar panels on our production facilities for many years, and we're carbon positive on a number of our sites. So before we even started looking at reporting, we were just doing because it was the right thing to do, and it's something that we believed in. So Pete introduced really strong values around sustainability in the environment, which is sort of carried on throughout the business. So things like reducing waste in the supply chain, green energy, And now we're sort of looking at our fleet and how we can reduce the carbon impact of that, which is typically a very challenging area for the TM industry, where electric vehicles are not always practical with the loads that you've got to carry, the types of journeys you've got to make. It doesn't really lend itself very well. So while we're making big strides in some areas, there's always going to be parts of the business like fleet where we're doing the best we can in making sure that our trips to sites are well spent, that we're getting hybrid vehicles where possible. We've recently bought our very first EV van, so we're going to use that for sort of transporting goods between manufacturing sites. So we're constantly looking at ways to improve our CSR, but the more you do, the harder it is to make those marginal gains. So it is, it's a challenge, but it's always something that we're committed to do as a business.
I think one of the biggest gains we can give CSR-wise, but might find it slightly difficult to measure, is the fact that we enable so many customers to be able to be more efficient with the way they work through technology and things like that. So longer run times on the battery, more reliable radio communication, so the customer has to get called out to site less, remote access, things like that. Just all these things that just keep removing trips to site over and over again, and obviously remove that person from being on the side of the road. Maybe with an engine running for a couple of hours a day to keep warm in winter or whatever it might be. So I think a lot of stuff that can't be measured is what we're doing already in technology. It's a bit more challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, and we sort of recognise that not everybody can afford to buy new technology, so we've looked at ways of, how can we get people to upgrade their legacy fleet, less efficient fleet, with new equipment. So with our Evo ACM, we're using more recycled materials, and we're inviting customers to trade in old equipment so we can update, the sort of operating system, if you like, the control system of the light, the radar system, and the sort of signal head, and they can sort of pick and choose what they keep of their existing fleet in order for them to gain access to more efficient technology without having the full outlay of a new signal. So
they can modernise without feeling the need to modernise and throw away the old lights. They can buy slightly less new lights and upgrade the older ones to bring them
And make
forward.
like marginal gains rather than
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
gains.
Yeah. And obviously for the equipment we take back off them, we responsibly recycle it anyway. So all the circuitry is put in one pile, metals in another, plastics are in a different one. Batteries are disposed of responsibly. So it takes an awful lot of effort for the guys to strip down the light again after making it 5, 6, 7 years previous, to then sort of take it out and put circuitry in that bin and metal in that bin and things like that. But it's something that has been instilled in everyone at the company, and long may it continue, really.
Yep.
And what's your next? So we say 12 months. What's your future looking like? What's next?
Well, we're exploring more and more how to use the technology within the whole group together. So obviously, as Will mentioned earlier, we've got AGD, who specialise in radar and detection equipment, and then we've got MAV, who specialise in sort of ANPR technology and equipment. So hoping to put some of that together and see what we can offer customers in terms of data collection or remote access. Registered vehicles on the ANPR machine allow access into somewhere or something like that. So just working on that at the moment.
Yeah, and we've had change in senior leadership within the business. So we're sort of devising our plan for the next sort of 3 to 5 years. One big sort of milestone within that plan is the opening of our new site in Cheltenham. So we're expanding our headquarters. We built a new purpose-built facility called DeltaWorks, and this is going to be the home of our sort of professional services delivery, where we're going to have a control room to monitor all of our sites live 24/7, and also meet the growing demand for our metro fleet. So it's sort of positioning us for future growth. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting couple of years ahead of us as we grow the team and deliver new solutions.
Will that be possibly like the single biggest event since the group became the group?
Yeah, I think we sort of see it as very symbolic in a way. We've worked quite independently as businesses up until now, and I think we're recognising that if we pool our resources together, we can do great things. So having this building, which is going to be a shared building within our existing estate, so it'll be where we've got our historic White Lion House, which is an old pub, our new AGD facility, which is where we build all our radar, and also the sort of TGS facility and commercial facility, which is Delta Works. You know, all working together on site is going to bring a lot more creativity and productivity to the business.
I think just by having people in the same building, same office space as well makes a big difference. You know, where obviously historically there's people been working from home during COVID. You know, we've got factories in Birmingham, Bolton-on-the-Water, Cheltenham. Everyone's spread out slightly. So as soon as you start coming together in the same room, people start sort of feeding off each other a little bit in terms of ideas and even just sharing contacts and things like that. It's it's a long way to go, but I think definitely heading in the right direction.
We finish with this actually. This podcast is called The Extra Mile.
Yep.
As a business, I'll ask both of you, what does going the extra mile mean to you?
For me personally, I think one of my biggest remits during my time in my role has been us to make ourselves as easy as possible to deal with. In terms of hire, sales, spares, deliveries, whatever it might be, we're working constantly to try and make ourselves answer the customers' problems in a timely manner. For me, the team that we're building around that kind of ethos at the moment is getting us near to going the extra mile as such.
Okay, for me it's always just more than just the product. You know, we're more than the manufacturer, and I think if we want the industry to develop and progress, then you've got to be an educator as well, and you've got to be responsible in your practices in terms of the environment. So how do we make ourselves a role model rather than just a supplier? So for me, going the extra mile is, this is what you need to be successful as a business, but here's all this other stuff that we need to do to be sustainable, and combining the two is going to be the path to future growth for us.
And so, Mark, I'd better call it a day.
That's why I waited for you to do yours first, so I could think a bit more.
Git. That's it.
All good.
Well, Tom, you've done a spectacular job.
All good.
I love the way you're just standing there judging me over there.
There's